For centuries, scholars have faced a frustrating problem when analyzing ancient scripture. How do you prove a text is objectively true? The default approach has always been to look outside the text itself. We hunt for physical artifacts, digging through the dirt to find historical corroboration that aligns with the written stories. But there is a massive logical trap built into this method. Seeking external physical validation for an infinite system is mathematically impossible. Every piece of external evidence requires its own proof, creating an endless chain that never actually reaches certainty. Treating scripture strictly as a historical artifact traps the observer in an unresolvable verification loop, where doubt remains the permanent state because the next artifact is always missing. Physics suggests an alternative. We don't verify the law of gravity by looking for founding documents. We observe its consistent operation in our immediate environment. Surah 39, verse 23, defines the Quran as a consistent, oft-repeated book. In topological terms, this describes a mathematically closed system, a loop that verifies its own integrity through internal symmetry. Within this sealed environment, the internal architectural pattern confirms itself at every coordinate, removing the need for external data points to stabilize the structure. To understand how a text can execute its own proof, we have to look at the living biology of a plant. This framework, known as the dual caustic universe, identifies two operational fields, the measurable visible field, D10, and the hidden field of memory and meaning, I9. These fields interact and stabilize by meeting in a central buffer, which the framework defines as the T3 tree. The T3 tree functions as a physical schematic, showing how the invisible patterns of I9 move across the buffer to manifest as the visible reality of D10. In nature, phototropism drives a plant's shoot upward to process light. This upward movement represents the visible D10 field. Within the text, this upward growth appears as the literal stories of historical figures, the visible narrative reaching toward a signal. Branches only exist because of gravitropism. Roots sense gravity and plunge downward into the earth to anchor the structure. This system is the Quran's invisible mathematical pattern, organizing proportions from the darkness, ensuring the visible stories stay anchored to an invariant truth. A plant executes these functions perfectly, regardless of its awareness. The biological system carries out its code autonomously through recursive growth. Because the text mirrors this recursive gene expression, it provides its own evidence. Each verse confirms the next through a shared structural DNA, making external historical proof redundant. If the text follows this biological blueprint, we have to account for the person holding it. Where does human consciousness fit into this architecture? The human observer is the manifestation of the T3 intersection. We occupy the exact center of the junction, where the hidden pattern and the visible narrative meet. The text functions as an operating system that requires a conscious operator to activate the buffer between these two fields. Surah 19, verse 12, delivers the vital command for this role: take the book with strength. Since the T3 junction is the only place where the hidden and visible fields stabilize, the reader's presence acts as the current that connects them. Once the reader recognizes their position as the necessary bridge, they become the active component through which the system's code actually runs. This activation occurs when the reader integrates the code into their psychological reality, locking the central node of the circuit into place. The system resolves when the reader moves beyond observation and begins applying the code directly, embodying the structure in their own life. In this final state, the reader effectively becomes the book.